I'm Brownfield anchor reporter Meghan Grebner. With us is Ag Secretary Tom Vilsack. Your secretary, it is an honor to kind of wrap up and talk about 2024 and your term in the Biden administration with us today. Thank you for joining us.
Happy to be with you.
Let's start first and talk a little bit about some of the biggest successes and some of the big wins that the Department of Agriculture has had during this administration.
Well, let me start at the top, which is that we've experienced record income over the last 4 years, despite the challenges today. If you'll take a look at the 4 years of the Biden administration, best farm income in the last 50 years, arguably maybe ever. Records being set on exports as well. But the challenge with that is that not everybody is sharing in that prosperity equally. And that's why it's been a focus of this administration to really focus on small and mid-sized farming operations. The folks who are selling less than $350,000 in sales every year represents about 90% of farms. Unfortunately, they only get about 15% of that farm income and only about 40% of the subsidies and the support payments that are part of our Farm Bill programs. It is the top 10% that get 85% of the income, get 60% of the crop insurance and subsidy payments. And so if you're in that top 10%, you're doing okay. If you're not, you're struggling. And that's why we've focused on trying to create a new system, a new model, if you will, for those small and mid-sized operations to be able to access more revenue streams, getting paid not just for what they grow, but how they grow it. Climate smart agriculture, and not just basically putting what they grow or raise in a supply chain where they only get 20 cents of every food dollar, but directly selling to their customer and consumer so that they get a better shake, a better percentage, if you will, of that food dollars, 50 to 75 cents of that food dollar. Making sure the markets were more competitive, whether it's our packers and stockyards rules that we've done, or whether it's creating investments in expanded processing capacity and local and regional food systems, a significant amount of investment in a structure and system that I think is going to allow farmers who are small and mid-sized to have multiple income streams. That's, I think, a very important aspect of the work that we've done. We've done a tremendous amount of nutrition. Our Forest Service is in much better shape than it was 4 years ago because of the investments we've made. Farmers are getting more conservation assistance because of the Inflation Reduction Act. Historic levels of investment in renewable energy. We've done over 10,000 REAP grants, those Renewable Energy for America programs, helping farmers and small businesses in rural places embrace renewable energy, lowering their costs for themselves and their neighbors. So a lot of activity over the course of the last 4 years. Very proud of what we've done, and anxious to make sure that with some help from Congress, we get a farm bill at some point in time, but we certainly get an extension before the end of the year. We get a budget that allows USDA to continue doing its good work. And I think we ought to be able to figure out how to give disaster assistance and maintain the conservation funding that farmers so desperately need.
And we'll talk about that coming up in a little bit. I live in rural Kentucky. I grew up in a small town on a family farm in central Illinois. Can you talk about the investments in rural broadband? Because I think that's one of the things that doesn't get, from my perspective, enough celebration, because it really makes a difference to making sure rural America is successful, but making sure farmers can operate as well.
Well, the USDA has been very active in that space of expanding and improving the broadband access. Why is it important? Well, because if you want to market to the rest of the world, if you want your students in rural schools to have access to the best opportunities to learn, if you want your hospitals to be able to provide expertise that may not be located in the small town, but is connected to a tertiary care center someplace else, you got to have broadband. And you have to have high-speed broadband. So that's why we've done over 300 projects under our Reconnect program in the last 4 years, investing over $2 billion to basically significantly improve and expand access to broadband in a number of communities across the United States. Now, that's complementing the investments that will now be made by the Department of Commerce and the FCC and state governments, where they're receiving grants from the federal government to go into those remote rural areas that currently don't have access or have very, very limited access. And you're going to see a significant expansion of broadband and the capability of that over the course of the next couple of years as those resources from the Inflation Reduction Act and the infrastructure law are invested in new broadband. So a lot has already taken place, a lot more to happen.
When you look at your first term as Secretary of Agriculture under the Obama administration, you look at this 4 years. When you see the advancements in technology or just in agriculture in general, what's been the biggest takeaway for you in the 12 years that you've been serving America's farmers and ranchers?
Well, look, we can be very proud of the fact that American agriculture is highly productive, and it's highly productive because of those technology advancements that have been made over the years. The challenge with technology is to make sure that everybody has access to it. Now we're all obviously very interested in AI. We're interested in drones. We're interested in sensors technology, which can be extremely helpful to farmers in terms of accessing opportunities to be paid for the environmental results that they can obtain from climate smart agriculture. Very important. But the reality is, if those technologies are only available to that top 10% of farms that basically are getting most of the income, well, that's not going to bode well for the other 90%. So it's going to be, I think, up to USDA to continue to provide the support and help to all farms of all sizes to be able to access those technologies. And for the industry, for the agribusiness industry, to miniaturize a lot of those technologies so that they actually are adaptable and usable by small and mid-sized operations. So instead of a 12-row planter, maybe you've got a 2-row planter, that type of thing. And I think you're going to see a lot of that kind of new technology. Data is another critically important aspect of this. As we learn more about climate smart agriculture, of how farmers can reduce their greenhouse gas emissions and how they can sequester carbon and how they can be paid for that, instead of just being paid for a commodity, now they're going to be paid for an environmental result in addition to the commodity, and maybe they'll even get a higher price for that commodity. These are the I think opportunities that we want to see continue to flourish. Now, we've made an initial investment. We've established a foundation of this new model. The question is whether or not we will continue to build on that foundation. I sincerely hope we can, because if we do, then all of these incredible robotics and AI and all of that can be accessible to all farmers, and I think it result in higher productivity and better profitability across the board.
When you look at the global market, I mean, we're in a global market space, and we look at market access. Where do you think is the biggest opportunity for U.S. agriculture in terms of growing demand, whether it's U.S. beef or pork or corn and soybeans?
Well, first of all, the last 4 years we've actually had records set in terms of exports. And notwithstanding the fact that we have a global economy that's not as strong as any of us would like. But to answer your question, I think there are multiple locations around the world. The easiest to address would be in Southeast Asia, tremendous capacity there. And I think we're seeing with tariffs being reduced in Vietnam, with Japan increasing the tariff quota for beef, we're seeing expanded opportunity and have over the last couple of years. I think there's more to be done in that world, in South Korea, in Japan, in Vietnam, in Thailand, in Indonesia, Malaysia. So that's one area. I think there's also continues to be opportunity in South America, Latin America. And I think the longer term play for expanded market access is obviously in Africa, because 1/2 of the entire increase in our world population over the course of the next several decades is going to be in that continent. So that's why it was important for us to establish what the program that we refer to as the Regional Agricultural Promotion Program, RAP, RAPP. It's a program that's providing resources to 66, 67 different organizations to enable them to expand their presence in markets that aren't necessarily at the top of mind, and not the Canadas or the Mexicos or the Chinas, but those small countries in Southeast Asia, those countries in Latin America, those nations in Africa. Opportunities for us to get a foothold, to begin creating the relationships, to having more people and more presence and more promotions in those countries as well. And if you do that, then I think what you're going to see is a more resilient trade system for American agriculture, more options for operations big and small to participate in exports, and obviously more income opportunities as well. So I would say that's kind of where things are. And again, our hope is that those promotion programs continue to be invested in and continue to bear fruit.
I just put together a year in review program, and I'm pretty sure it was at a hearing at the beginning of the year. We were talking about the Farm Bill, and you called it Groundhog Day. And it was the first cut that I picked in this program because it was so appropriate for what is happening in terms of the Farm Bill discussion throughout 2024 and as we head into 2025. What are your concerns about getting a Farm Bill extension so Congress can get back to work in its new session to get a Farm Bill done?
We had a deal. It was a pretty good deal, actually, for farmers. It would have extended the Farm Bill. It will pay for the orphan programs. A lot of people don't realize that if you extend the Farm Bill, but you don't provide resources for some of the smaller programs that fund into and provide opportunities for local and regional food systems, for organic, for dairy, those programs basically expire. So this deal that was agreed to would have provided the resources for those orphan programs, would have extended the Farm Bill for another year to give Congress the ability to get their job done, would have provided significant disaster assistance for farmers who have been impacted by natural disaster, and would have taken the Inflation Reduction Act conservation resource, historic levels of conservation assistance for farmers, put it into the Farm Bill baseline, and would have saved $10 billion. So that the economic disaster assistance program wouldn't have cost an additional dime. It would have been offset by this savings. And they decided not to do that. And now we're in a situation where there is no extension of the Farm Bill at this point. There is no money for the orphan programs. There is no disaster assistance for farmers who are significantly in need of that assistance. And there's no assurance that the Inflation Reduction Act conservation resources will continue to be available. Do farmers want this? I can tell you, we have waiting lists for the conservation resources. We've helped an historic number of farmers with their conservation needs. They want this resource. They need this resource. They ought to have this resource. So it is troublesome to me that here we are once again at the last minute waiting for Congress to do the job, which, frankly, from a Farm Bill perspective, should have been done a year or two ago. And so hopefully people will get in the holiday mood and find a way to get to yes, so that we see an extension, we see disaster assistance, we see conservation spending protected and utilized for farmers, and that we get those orphan programs paid for so that they can continue to do the good work they do.
Last question. You've graciously given us so much of your time. I don't want to take too much more. You've been a wonderful servant to American agriculture and U.S. farmers and ranchers. What's next? Will we see you in the ag space, continue to see you in the ag space?
I've dedicated my professional life to helping farmers and rural small communities. I'm going to find ways, I believe, to continue the work that we've done here at USDA in terms of local and regional food systems, in terms of food security and nutrition security. I've developed a passion in those areas, and I'm hopeful that I'll have opportunities to continue and extend that work outside of USDA. I've been extraordinarily privileged to have worked in this department. People often ask me why I came back, and I say very easily and truthfully, it's because of the people that work here. They are just extraordinary public servants, and the people we work for, the hardworking people who live, work, and raise their families predominantly in rural America, which is the soul of the earth, critically important to this country and its value system. being able to work for those folks, being able to help them, being able to create new opportunities. Been very, very blessed to have this opportunity.
Thank you so much for your time, and thank you for spending time with farm broadcasters, farmers, ranchers, the folks on the ground as well. It's greatly appreciated, and it does not go unnoticed.
Thank you.
I'm Meghan Grebner for Brownfield.